1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around.
Our guest today is Ray Columbus, an icon from the 60s, and he was a teenage friend of mine in the 50-60 era, and in recalling those times, I have a great deal of pleasure in being able to say, Ray, thank you for coming along to our show today.
Dion, it's an absolute pleasure. It was such a thrill to hear from you last week, and from Cecile. I suppose it's Cecilia, the Paul Simon song, but I'm
happy.
It was so nice to hear from you both, and it was such a great surprise.
I guess to get right into it, Ray, when we were friends there, I can still remember your burning enthusiasm and your desire to do something about music and singing.
Sure.
Still got that?
Absolutely.
When did you first become interested, and how did it happen?
Well, my father put me on the stage when I was 6 to be a singing tap dancer, but by the time I met you, I think we were about 16. I'd gone into rock and roll by then. I'd switched from Fred Astaire, which my father planned, to Elvis. But I was still using the training and all of the stage presence and whatever that I was taught on stage as a tap dancer. So basically, what I did was shift gears from 6 to 16, and from middle of the road vaudevillian to rock and roll. Basically, by the time I was 16, and I'd been going through a transitionary phase ever since I discovered James Dean when I was about 13 and a half.
Well, recall those days, yes. Do you remember, Ray, attending a Sid Hollis dance school?
I sure do.
And singing what I felt was almost your first song. I went up to the band and said, look, we've got a great singer here. I didn't know whether you could sing or not, by the way. And I think the first song they played was actually an instrumental, and you sang Tequila.
I did the Tequila.
That was great.
But anyway, I can remember the pair of us in those times when we got around together, wanting to be the most modern of all the young people about, and wearing the very latest clothing, the
Absolutely.
Ivy League trousers, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. It was because of Operation Deep Freeze. The Americans, I used to go over to Littleton and meet all the young guys in the Navy there, and I used to always give them money and ask them could they send me back some Ivy League trousers or some, particularly some Levi jeans. And I think I had the first pair of Levi's in the country, and they arrived in the mail one day. I can't remember whether you saw me in them or whether that was before or after Deek, but
very envious.
and I remember they were like solid cardboard, and I could barely walk in them. Excuse me. And but yeah, they were great days. And that photo that you sent me the other day by email.
Yes.
Excuse me, just blew me away to see the double kiss curls and that I had in my hairdo. I don't know why I've got croaky. It's not emotion. It's just allergies.
Well, I also remember that you had the latest white leather moccasins.
I had all the gear. Yeah.
And the Ivy League trousers with the small belt buckle at the back.
Yes.
I remember those distinctly because I think we were in a bit of a competition there as for the best dresser.
We used to strut around. It was so wonderful. And that was the great thing about the Cathedral Square in those days. It was a gathering point, wasn't it, to do things and to be shown.
And to be seen.
And be seen too, that's right. And of course, little peacocks that we were walking around the street.
That's the word.
Was I with you when I was leaning on the park when we first got parking meters? And I was leaning on the parking meter reading a comic one day. So I can't remember whether I was younger or older now. And this policeman walked along and he told me to move on. And I said, I paid my time, officer. So I put sixpence in the meter and I still had 20 minutes to lean on it. And he was just blown away. He just said to me, God,
well, funnily
he not
enough,
only looks weird, he is.
Funnily enough, Ray, I do recall the time that we decided we would be a bit like Sherlock Holmes and got pipes.
Yes.
And we got on our bikes, and neither of us were smokers, and we biked around the square on a Friday night, which was the thing to do. You could ride around the square in cars and bikes in those days. It was packed with people, and we smoked these pipes.
Unbelievable. We must have looked, it's a wonder I didn't fall off my pipe. It would have looked absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, you probably can't recall, but I was ill for hours afterwards, and I had to lay on the riverbank under one of the bridges there for about 3 hours before I dared get up.
Oh, unbelievable when you think. I'd forgotten that pipe incident, I've got to say. So thanks for reminding me.
Okay,
I don't know why my voice has gone all throaty.
Well, I guess, Ray, one of the most important things is how did you actually start in the band? We've had all sorts of reports here from different people about
Matt
it. So,
O'Loughlin
Matt
went to
O'Loughlin.
school with you at Xavier College, and he said that you went into a competition.
Went to it, yes.
And you won it.
Yes, we
And-
went to... I'd been watching for about 4 weeks the annual talent quest at Xavier College. Well, I guess it was annual anyway, because they seem to have them every year. And I saw all these guys practicing to go on this talent quest, and I had my fledgling. I was practicing at home. I think I was 13 by this time, maybe 14. And I saw everybody getting ready. There was a guy who played saxophone. He was practicing the Holy City, and I thought it was absolutely pathetic at the time, I've got to tell you. I thought, God, anyone can beat this guy. So anyway, and I was, the morning of the competition, I just decided I was going to go in it. And I found a guy called, and I remember his name still, to play piano for me. And we went on and did Lordy Miss Claudie and Johnny Devlin's Straight Skirt. So, and I had drainpipe black jeans with Ming blue socks, blue suede shoes, my hair done like in that photo that you had, and all the teachers thought I was a freak anyway. I mean, they thought I was sort of some sort of strutting little rooster, I don't know. Thought I was very unusual. And I went on, and we got 90% of the vote. And they brought the house down. And I was, as a student, I wasn't at all popular there, because I did look rather unusual. And I'd come to school 2 or 3 times a year with leftover lipstick and makeup on my face in the tap dancing competition.
I could understand it, yes.
And I think they thought I was a transvestite. I don't know. Couldn't figure it anyway. And so all of a sudden I won this competition, and I thought, hell, if I can win this competition and the audience doesn't even like me as a person, what can I do if I go to places where they don't even know me yet?
Yes.
So that's what my defining moment, guys.
Yeah, a bit of the tall poppy syndrome too, remember?
Yes, it was,
Envy sort of thing.
I don't even, I mean, they just didn't, they couldn't understand me. I was a walking art form as far as I was concerned, I mean, you were a great boxer, and the only thing that I was any good at was singing and dancing and soccer playing, I suppose, and that soccer was considered sissy, so I had this double sissy sort of image. I can remember one of the teacher's brother, Dennis, at Xavier College, he'd put me up on the desk in the morning and say, how long did it take Columbus to get dressed this morning?
Oh, dear.
Do his hair and everything. And most people, I suppose, would have been absolutely shocked and embarrassed, but I just stood there and posed I thoroughly enjoyed it. To be noticed,
Yes, you won the battle. Yeah, you won the battle. I can understand that.
I listened to Dion's stories over the years that Christchurch in the 1950s was coming out of the war, and they were very grey and they were very conservative.
Very, very British, absolutely incredibly conservative.
Yes, and so anything that was a little bit different was really quite odd.
Yes.
But oddness is great, because here you both are. You've done heaps in your life. Give us some sort of glimpses of what happened along the way.
Well, I've had an incredibly lucky life. I've just been so fortunate, and making the right choices at the right times, and timing is everything. And you mentioned Sid Hollis. One of those nights I was there was a guy called Jack Lark. I don't know whether you remember him, Dion. He was an English guy. He came over on the Merchant Navy or something.
Yes.
And he was a really good singer. He did Cliff Richard sort of stuff. And he was singing there with a downbeat one night, and he didn't turn up. And so the drummer was my drummer, Pete Ward, who died a couple of years ago.
That's right, I remember Peter well.
Well, Peter came over to me and said, look, Jack Lark hasn't turned up. And Pete and I used to practice once a week trying to get our little band without a name going, the precursor to the Invaders. And he said, look, why don't you get up and sing a couple of songs? The band, they could probably play That's All Right Mama or something that you already know, or Whole Lot of Shakin' or something. So in the next set, I said, okay. So they called me up. I got up and sang That's All Right Mama, which I'm still singing, by the way, on stage. And,
That's great.
That's really good, yes.
I love that song. And so Doc Foster was the leader of the band. He came over and said, after the break, he said, look, why don't you come along to Spencer Street on Saturday night? Because if Jack Lark doesn't turn up, you've got a job with the band. So I was rehearsing my real band that I wanted to take on to the future, doing original material and whatever, but ended up singing in the biggest dance band in town at the biggest dance hall at Spencer Street, and It was just amazing, and by the after a year or so, I'd got most of my band infiltrated into the group.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because so is destiny made, isn't it?
Just destiny. So you, as you said, you got me up to go tequila, and then later on, I get up to do That's All Right, Mama.
Well, the journey begins with the first step, Ray.
Absolutely, it was phenomenal, and so timing's everything, and then of course. We went on to play at the Plainsman once the Invaders had formed formally. I'd got 3 of the guys into, because the lead guitarist at Spencer Street left the band, and so his number one student was Dave Russell, who was 14, came along as shorts to audition, and he was like Keith Richards. He was just this amazing rock and roll riff guitarist.
Born with a gift.
Absolutely. He didn't know where he got it from, and he was always the nucleus of the Invaders sound, and so we... by the time we then brought Wally Scott in, and then Pete was already in the band anyway, so I had 3 of the guys, and then the bass player, Mac Jamison, stayed with us for a while, but he just couldn't quite cut it and was a bit older, and so he backed out eventually, and Pooney Solomon took his place, and then one night we were playing at Plainsman right opposite the Majestic Theatre, and the promoter came in and said, I'm going to come back and see you next week because I think you should come to Auckland and work for us and do a spot up there for 6 weeks or something. So I thought about it. Didn't like the look of the guy, but I thought, oh, well, I'll wait. But meanwhile, Howard Morrison and his quartet were playing at one of the Harry M. Miller shows across the road the following week, and he came in and saw us do one of our 4 shows. And he came up to me afterwards and introduced himself, and I was blown away, of course, because the Howard Morrison quartet were just huge. And he said, you've got to come to Auckland. You've got to bring this band to Auckland. You'll just be huge up there. And it was really Howard. In fact, I reminded him just last week we were talking that he actually was the one, for someone of his presence to actually say that, I took it very seriously. So when the promoter came back and made the offer again for a 6-week season, playing all the clubs in Auckland over the following summer, which was Christmas, New Year, 1962, 63, I took it. Within a year and a half, we were the number 1 band in Australia and New Zealand. Just timing is just seeking that moment, and that's something my dad taught me, being an entertainer on stage, to seize the moment. And he used to say to me things like, rehearsal's the hard work. When you go on stage, the show's the fun. All those sort of things. And the show must go on. And I only missed 1 show in my life, pre-heart attack days. I missed one because I'd had a vocal surgery on my vocal cords. I missed 1 show purely for that reason. And when I had my heart attack in September 2004, I missed 1 show, and Suzanne Lynch filled in for me, and then the following month, in a month's time, in October, once I was recovered, I went in and then filled in for her for a show.
Looks like you would have been a good fighter, Ray. You're a sucker for punishment.
Absolutely. I wasn't a good fighter with you. I remember getting in that ring that time, and you tried to teach me to spar, and as soon as you hit me a couple of times, I thought, this is it. I'm not going to be a boxer. No way I was going to have this little face beaten up. You always amazed me how you kept on looking good. Obviously, not many guys got you on the face. But,
Ray, the other thing that amazes me about you, and that I've always said is one of your strong points, is your belief in your tenacity. And I think that you've got to have that to be a person to succeed in the manner that you have. Apart from talent and all that, but at the end of the day, you've got to have that ability to be able basically to take it on the chin and walk through it, and you've done that.
Persistence is everything. And I forget who made that quote, but that... I've seen it attributed to many people, but you can have all the degrees in the world, you can have all of the education in the world, but ultimately it's persistence that actually gets you from one point to another in any field, I think. And you've got to have the self-belief. I think you've got to have faith. Without faith, you don't have any hope. I learned that as a Catholic boy growing up. I believe, like Gandhi, that my religion is between my God and me. And I've been like that for some time, but I'm probably more religious now than I've ever been.
Well, the interesting thing about life in itself is that all the experiences you have come up to be the sum of what you are. Exactly. And so that basis is that all the goodness is within us, and so we have to share that outwards. And I would like to share with you and the listeners here at the moment that all the enjoyment that you've brought so many people over the 50 years, is it almost, Ray, about 40?
Yes.
Yes, and so that must add up to your karmic circle, the fact that what you give out comes back to you. So maybe that's part of why you're doing so well.
It could be, because there's a wonderful thing that comes back. I mean, unless you've been on stage, whether it's before a small audience or a large audience, like a couple of years ago, 27 Australian and New Zealand stars, or 3 New Zealanders, and of course they were all from Christchurch, Max Merritt, Dinah Lee, and myself. We toured in a huge arena show to 220,000 people in 18 arenas over 6 weeks, called Long Way to the Top, the history of Australian rock and roll. There were 44 number one hits, and I had 2 of them, Till We Kissed and She's a Mod, and 27 stars going back to Cold Joy, right through to, from the mid-50s through to the mid-70s. That was the biggest tour that year of Australia. It grossed $11 million.
That's astonishing.
Bigger than any overseas tour. It was just huge, and the first time in Australia for a long time that we played in venues, where there were 12,000 people, like the Sydney Entertainment Centre, 12,000 people a night. To be able to entertain those people and then get that glow back from them, that is what really makes this.
Yeah, that's the
the
payback,
payback.
isn't it? That's right.
It's absolutely amazing, and so everything that we give comes back, I think, tenfold. We're just so blessed to be in this industry where, for some reason, people like what we do, and I think we're very blessed to have it. It's a God-given thing, and whether you're trained, it comes naturally or whatever. And so Howard's a wonderful example. I mean, he's actually just completed 50 years professional on stage. Mine's not quite 50. I mean, I've easily been going more than 50 years with the tap dancing side, but it actually started professionally in 1961, so we've got a wee way to go.
We're going to invite you to join us with our Festival of Rock and Roll in February of 2007, and we'll fudge it a bit and say 50 plus.
I mean, it is 50 years of rock and roll. We've been performing that long, because I remember writing a song for the 21st birthday of rock and roll. I wrote it and recorded it in Los Angeles. So that was 1977.
Right.
It was when rock and roll was 21 years old. And I had half of the Beach Boys. I had a fantastic band backing me for it. And basically the chorus line went, "Happy birthday, baby. Happy birthday, rock and roll. You came of age and bless your soul." And here we've got it. I could probably redo it and coin it to 50 years. It's quite phenomenal.
I would like you to get working on it right now.
Okay, you got a deal.
We would love you to just give us a high of how you feel about being 50 plus and loving it.
It's just amazing. After I had my heart attack, I stopped doing a lot of the business things behind the scenes. For many years, I've worked for New Zealand Music and promoted, publishing and production and people overseas, and managed a lot of acts, and I've cut back a lot of that now. I've got a young colleague who does the management of the artists in my name, and what I'm doing, enjoying more and more, is still performing. I love doing it, and it's good for my lungs, it's good for my heart. And because of that dreadful period when I started smoking pipes with Dion, and I got heavily into cigarettes up until 30 years ago, and even though I gave it up 30 years ago, it nearly killed me. With that heart attack was caused by weeds, they call them, little arteries that, not your main arteries that go into your heart, the widowmaker or any of those big arteries, that they call them weeds, and don't regenerate from being the damage they have from cigarettes. That was a real eye-opener to me, because I knew my lungs had regenerated and I knew my liver had regenerated. So that's the only regret I've ever had in my life, is that I took up smoking. The only thing I would change if I came back again.
Well, let's hope everything works out well for the future, Ray.
I'm in great shape, Diana.
You said to me that you're still singing. Where are you singing?
I mostly do corporate shows, private shows, in Auckland, in Australia also. I mean, some public ones. We're going down, Suzanne Lynch and I are performing in Riverton for the Riverton Carnival for their anniversary of 40 years down in Southland. That's in a month or so. So I'm going down there for that. So I get asked to do all, like late last year, I went to Porirua for their 40th anniversary. I think they think, who's still around that was here 40 years ago for us? Who's still alive? Oh, Columbus is still around. So I do all sorts of stuff like that are public sort of concerts. But a lot of the shows that I do are private functions, for corporates.
Oh, that's great.
And where I do 60s. I'm considered to be a retro artist in Australia and New Zealand, and so sometimes they put bills together with 4 or 5 of us, and I may be part of them, or I've got my own band that I use from time to time and headline it. Like there are still bands in Hamilton, for instance, like the Mods. So whenever they have a special show, they usually always ask me if I'll be the special guest. I get to do all sorts of stuff like that. And I just enjoy it. I just love to be able to get up. I get on my mini tramp. I have a sauna, get on my mini tramp and sing along with Elvis for 2 days out from the show, so that I'm as fit as a fiddle.
Great.
Lungs are pumping. And, Elvis's stuff is still a great challenge to sing with. And
It sounds pretty full.
Thank you very much for joining us
God
on the
bless you.
show.
Take care, you all. Bye.
Bye.